Yeah, I mean, look, there's narratives, rhetoric, plans, missed plans, great plans, all different kinds of topics we can go through. But at the end of the day, this is a result-oriented business. It's about winning, and that's how we're going to get judged. One way, we're going to get judged, along with others, which is the style of soccer we put on the field, and it's been really defensive the last couple of years. And this year, there's far more goals, and so we're starting to address these as we go. And every team goes through phases, development phases, injuries, change teams. But in terms of the end goal, the destination, if you will, it's been too long since we've held a trophy above our head. And that's the destination. So that's kind of the guiding star, the guiding light. With the right performances, maybe we're 7 days away from that. But we won't know if we have that opportunity for a couple more days. But in terms of how to balance building as well as our development system and all those things, we take great pride in our development system. It's pretty obvious. We take great pride in it when you look at the field, when you look at our roster, how we promote from academy to Defiance and up, but also bring players into Defiance and promote up. We believe in that in terms of the continuity, in terms of learning our environment and what our coaches want, most importantly what Brian wants. In terms of bringing players in, which we do every year. A lot of it depends on our need, a lot of it depends on resource, and a lot of it depends on the situation, right? So where we are on the cap in MLS matters a lot because we all know you have 3 designated players, and then you have TAM money, and then all transfer fees other than designated players count on your cap. So one of the things that I think we need to start addressing a little bit more directly is when we sell players, how we're obtaining more allocation money. Allocation money is how you spend more on the meat of your roster, if you will, whereas DPs are very well defined, and I think everyone knows those rules. Sorry, did that answer it? Because I don't want to miss like what you're asking.
It was overarching, but I think it's important for someone to understand that without making assumptions.
Right.
So thank you for that.
Okay.
Yeah, you made pretty clear, I think, that you wanted to sign a U22 this
100%,
summer.
yeah.
And you, I guess, what can you tell us about the challenges of that when it comes to budget and if it felt like budget was a significant, last year you told us there wasn't really much of a transfer budget. This year it seems like there was.
Yep.
So I guess you could just speak to sort of like the ins and outs of the budgetary challenges or freedoms that you had this year.
Yeah, I mean, so one of the most important things, going back to the beginning of the year when we started talking about it, is what we knew was with good performance, we could play up to 50 matches this year in about a 9-month spell. And for anyone doing their homework, 50 matches in 9 months, 9.5 months is the most. You can go anywhere in the world and you can look for that. And I promise you're going to find maybe the same, but not a lot more. In MLS, the limitations come down to how you build your roster, when you build your roster, and then does it sustain. Unfortunately, we've had some injuries, long-term injuries this year that have heavily impacted the way we've been able to use the roster. Paul Arriola, Jordan Morris, Ryan Kent, Kim Key, spent time out. So we haven't seen the entire roster all year, but we put the majority of this roster together at the beginning of the year knowing 4 different major competitions to play in and challenge. And I think when we addressed earlier this year was we knew we had a U22 spot to go out. Financially speaking, we had about somewhere between $2.5 to $4 million. So targeting players within those guidelines, which I assure you is a good budget for attracting a player that, and you guys have heard me talk about this, most likely would contribute as opposed to come in and be a reserve, right? Because the biggest concern I had was adding a body that isn't going to contribute. There's a lot of disruption in a group like this when you add another body into the mix. Is it to take away playing time? Is it to contribute on the field? You know, if it's a player that comes in and impacts the group quickly, maybe not as a starter, but even as a substitute, you're going to get a lot better. You're going to get a lot better relationship build in a short amount of time, assimilation into the group. So that was what we were aiming at. And I think a lot of the conversations, I like you guys have nailed down most of the players we had conversations with, at least got down the road with, right? Because for the 5 or 6 players we got down the road with, as you know, there's about 50 that ended with, no, I'm not ready to leave my home country, or no, that's a long ways from where I live, or no, MLS isn't where I want to be right now. But the players that we nearly signed were players that we felt could come in and actually get playing time, that would actually also complement from a personality standpoint what we're doing as a group. Because when I address that, what this group has shown over the course of the year, specifically in the Club World Cup, and I can tell you guys, you know, if the Club World Cup had not gone the way it did, there's a much higher chance we would have seen change, because we were having a good year, not good enough. But what the Club World Cup showed, not only in the locker room but on the field, was that this group does have the level of competition it takes to win another trophy. That's the pressure that's on them now. That's earned pressure, because they showed us how they could compete against PSG, Atletico Madrid, and Botafogo. And they've continued that since, obviously, been on a good run with just 1 loss since then. So when we talk about all the different layers, what I don't want is I don't want anyone to think there wasn't money. There's money. Spending it responsibly, spending it on the right player is ultimately my job. It's not just to spend it to put tap shoes on and stand in front of a camera and dance and pretend that we did something great. I think avoiding making a mistake on the roster this summer was the most important thing. And would have loved to have 2 of the names you guys have reported on, but we didn't get them.
Thanks. Craig, with that, are you now putting, or have you now put pressure on yourself to definitely make a move in the offseason then to bring in that splashy kind of U22 player?
We make changes every winter, so I always feel pressure, if I'm being honest. I wouldn't categorize. You know, the U22 conversation was because that's the roster spot we had available after we loaded the roster in the beginning of the year. In terms of the offseason, we'll wait and see what it brings. I think the 3 games this week plus the MLS playoffs are going to tell us a little bit more about whether or not it's time to evolve the roster in terms of 2 positions, 3 positions, 4 positions, but there will be changes. There will be changes that some people like and some other people won't like those exact same changes, then some people will.
And then, yes, you can't do the, the window is closed, but there's still free agent, things like that. Are you definitely not in the running to sign anybody within?
No, look, I mean, we're open and I'm open, but I'm not going to lie to you. You know, the top players under the age of 23 are under contract. There aren't players outside of contracts right now that are just riding out their first contract or their second contract because they have that much courage or that much freedom, right? So the top players are off the board in terms of that category of MLS roster building. In terms of free agency, there are players available. We have a little bit of freedom on our roster right now. So if the right player comes up, we'll look at it. But by the time you get paperwork and work permits, if it's an international player, we're looking at having a player available for 4 matches, roughly, maybe 5. I guess now that the Salt Lake match has been bumped back, maybe 5. But that's a challenge too. So yeah, we're looking, but I'm not going to pretend that there's this wide open category of player that's still available within that U22 slot.
Go back to sorry. I want to go back to Jeremiah, then I'll come back to Jada.
So I guess you say budget wasn't really wasn't the main issue. What would you say were the reasons that you went down the path on as many guys as you did, and ultimately, it seems like you ran into a bunch of players who weren't ready to make the move for one reason or another. And I guess is that an issue with identification early on in the process?
No, I mean, of course I feel no. I don't know if anyone would sit and answer that question yes in my chair, but I think the reality is, and I appreciate you asking it the way you asked it. I think coming out of the Club World Cup, MLS is comfortably ranked 10-11 best league in the world. So in order to attract a player of consequence that's going to come in and have an immediate impact, it's very difficult to recruit players that aren't also being recruited by leagues that are 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th in the world. And those are the players we went after. We didn't go after players unproven or players that are coming out of a little lesser league in this particular window, because we needed players that came in with proven ability in high pressure situations. That wasn't going to be an experiment. Again, going back to what this team has been producing, how the team's been playing, and the standard they've set for themselves, it wasn't, in my opinion, it wasn't the right time to bring in another project player. And so that's why we were in the category we were in. We were in potentially high impact, short-term impact, high impact players. And so those players have a lot of good decisions to make. And I can tell you one of our conversations with the player, he was considering Serie A, he was considering us, he was considering Eredivisie, and he was considering one other top 7 league. So it came down to us and I guess his current club. So, he decided to stay where he was as opposed to come here. But the process, the progress we made with him, I think will have long-term benefit in terms of he was genuinely impressed with who we are, what we stand for as a club. Players have good decisions to make when you get into the top 10 leagues in the world. And it can be finances, it can be personal, it can be family. But I always tell our guys when I offer contracts that you don't have decisions to make until you do. These are good decisions, these are fun decisions, these are life-altering decisions. And so, ran into a couple situations this year that I of course, I wish they would have chosen us, but they didn't. So we circle the wagons. You've heard me say it before. I don't keep players I don't want. I tend to get rid of the ones that don't work. And so this is a locker room made up of guys we want. There's no experiment in there.
Jada, back to you.
That was kind of, your answer was kind of in there. What about, to kind of just be clear then, you're more so looking for somebody who can definitely make an impact now, not necessarily looking for somebody to be able to bring in and who can make more of an impact next season once they've, understand the system.
Yep. Always was. Yeah. And you can go back and check everything I've said. That's consistent. Not bringing in depth. That wasn't the goal this summer. I believe in the group we have in terms of depth. That's not something I question in that locker room right now. I think getting better on the top end of this roster is where we where we needed to stay focused. So we didn't keep bringing in projects. We've got some players in there that are accomplishing a lot this year in terms of where we thought they'd be in their development. And that's a compliment to a lot of those young men. I didn't feel like handing the coaching staff another project player was the right thing at this time. So you're spot on. Yeah.
And then with Ryan Kent, he did so well. Obviously, it was a short run because of the injury, and I know the cost. Maybe is he completely out of reach? I guess to bring back next year. Just because of the way he might be priced.
Nothing's out of reach because the winter's when we can offset and reset and free up whatever we want to free up, right? So what I would say is the numbers are always negotiable when the relationship is right. And so even if it's fiscally on paper not the right number, which is undecided, we haven't made those decisions for 26, but I think a lot of what we do here is based on the relationships, and I think the players would attest to that same thing. And so I don't think it's clear cut. I mean, first of all, I think Ryan will get healthy before the end of our season, so I think there's still more to see there. And then we'll make those decisions as we get there. There's always one or two surprises every offseason that I don't see coming, and there's probably one or two surprises every year that the locker room doesn't see coming, right? And that's just kind of the nature of how this game works.
All right, go to Moz.
Boy, let me see if I can get this right.
You can get it right.
Just
Just be blunt.
I know.
That's the way we get it
That's the
right.
only way I can be. One of the other part of your job is the fan base.
Mm-hmm.
And you talked a little bit about, you used to play defensive style. So here, kind of my A and B. A, how did the Club World Cup, what effect do you think it had on your fan base? And then B, going back to what you said about you played a defensive style, how do you feel about the type of style your team is playing now? And that's what you make a judgment on, coach. That's why.
I'll answer B first because I was a defender. So this makes me nothing but uncomfortable. The more the game gets open, the more uncomfortable I get. But it is far more fun to watch this year's team. It's more of a roller coaster. The highs are higher, the lows are lower, and they come in the same games. It's not a consistent lull. It's not a calm stream. It's a bit more of like river rafting. But it's got a lot of exciting moments in it. So I would say just the defender in me gets uncomfortable, but I like the way we're playing. I like when our coaching staff and Brian free our players up in the attacking half of the field to express themselves. I know that's an overused term in soccer, but in terms of movement, off-ball movement, on-ball movement, this year we have more players willing to take defenders on the dribble and more willing to beat that player, more willing to lose the ball. And it's part of the game. And I feel like in years past, that's one of the things that we've really, really been missing is those individuals that are willing to challenge. And Ryan Kent and Pedro de la Vega and Georgie Manuga are three of those guys. Paul's work rate is ridiculous in terms of exposing space. He's not necessarily your guy that's going to get the ball at his feet and challenge a defender one-on-one, but we have so many different things to offer in those wide spaces. Jesus comes inside and combines and gets around the corner. It's a really exciting, it's a much more exciting team to watch in terms of the opportunities we're creating. A was the Club World Cup. Look, I can't answer on behalf of the fan base what they saw. I think we can all look at the same painting and see something different, and that's the way I see games. There's certain games that I'm disappointed in that I come downstairs and everybody else loved, or I loved and everyone else saw something, so I'll leave that up to the fans to tell us. But what I took from the Club World Cup was this group, and not just the players. Everybody likes to talk about the players, but I'm talking about the lightning in the bottle that is the Seattle Sounders this year, the coaching staff, the medical staff, the performance staff, the video, the analytics. I'm talking about the lightning in the bottle that is happening right now in that room, including the players, which is the preparation that goes into it, the performance that comes out of the preparation, how it's being communicated from a video standpoint, reminded all the way through our younger developing players working with our development staff still. And so I think when we talk about the Club World Cup, what the Club World Cup proved to us, including myself, is that we should have been better in the first half of the year. And that's not okay in sports. When you figure that out because you've performed consistently over 3 games, because the competition was greater or because the situation was different, that's not okay. And I talk about the lightning in the bottle of the human beings we have in this group right now and what we are doing as a group, what we're achieving as a group. But the realization in the middle of your season that you have underachieved up to that point, even though it was okay, air quotes okay, was humbling. But it was humbling in a way that everyone had the choice to kind of pull the bootstraps and get to work again. And since then, I think we've done a very good job of showing up game in, game out. And tonight will be another example of one we better show up for.
I think we got time for a couple more tops. Jackson, we'll go to you next, and then Jeremiah.
Hey, Craig, wanted to talk to you about general TAM budgeting.
Yeah.
And maybe this is time specific as opposed to like now, a year from now. But when you look at the TAM budget, how do you go about balancing it out of, say, lower level TAM players or even players who then want to raise to be a lower level TAM player versus then the high level impact players who may make, just underneath what a designated player makes? How do you go about measuring, let's have more lower budget or let's have fewer higher budget? How does that work in your mind as a philosophy in general?
Well, one of the things that some clubs are doing really, really well in our league is creating more and more allocation. And what's kind of gets swept under the rug is how much allocation some of the other teams are creating. And so I don't want to confuse general allocation with target allocation, but allocation is quickly becoming allocation. It's quickly becoming just another mechanism in the cap and how you can create more money. So there are ways to create allocation that I think we need to look further into, deeper into, and start to participate in a little bit more than we have, right? And so in terms of planning, what I would say is no one's trying to save. I'm not trying to save cap space. I'm trying to spend cap space. Allocation to me is cap space. And so we're trying to max it out to give our coaches the best opportunity in our group, the best opportunity to achieve. How that balances out sometimes is dictated based on seasons. I mean, look, we've got some guys this year that deserve raises. Significant raises. And if you would have told me that 6 months ago, I would have said, well, I'm not planning on it, right? Because when you draw it out on paper, this person's a substitute, and this person plays 20 minutes, and this person plays every third week, and this person. But as the season goes, we all learn good and bad, right? And so we've got some guys in there that deserve more money, whether that qualifies as TAM or roster or – they all kind of get spent on the roster. One way or another, they're all mechanisms that allow you to build other than your DPs. And so very specific categories and thresholds, but in terms of how we use that is based on the balance of the group. I mean, in a perfect world, I would love to have 6 max TAM players. But in order to do that, we've got to go out and create a ton of allocation because they're not all going to be TAM in that scenario. Some of them are going to be max GAM players, right? Because of all these different mechanisms and words we use. But the shortest answer I can give you is in order to get more higher level allocation-based players, we've got to start creating more allocation for ourselves.
Jeremiah, to close us out.
Yeah. So you talked about wanting to spend, as you know, to spend the money you have.
Yep.
You know, you had a transfer budget. You had salary cap space.
Yep.
You had an extra window to make moves before the Club World Cup. You obviously didn't make a move. I think you're the only team in the league that didn't make a move. Do you feel like I mean, are you satisfied with the work that you did? Do you feel like you sort of let the roster down? Do you feel satisfied with everything you built? Like, how do you assess yourself in this whole situation?
We were maximizing what we had. What we had was a U22 spot. We can't confuse the issue here. We did not have $3 million to go spend on the roster. We had a U22 spot. That player can only earn up to the maximum salary, $740. So if you believe that players are being bought for $8 to $12 million and making $740, I would say dig into it. What I would say specifically here is we had the budget to go get a player. We exhausted the exercise and we exhausted all of the avenues of the specific positions where we thought a player could come in and contribute to our team. Not next year, this year. So specifically, we were looking for a player that could play now for the Sounders, not for the 2026 Sounders. That wasn't part of what we were aiming at, because we have plenty of young guys that we think will be more developed next year, Osaze being one of them. He might be a little ahead of schedule. In terms of exhausting the search, we did it. You know, we went through thousands of profiles. We spoke to, I don't know how many agents. We spoke directly with a number of players. We whittled it down with our coaching staff, with our technical staff, and got it down to the players that we all were willing to commit to, because it's not just the front office signing someone that commits to playing a player. There's a lot of things that go on, and there's a lot that the coaching staff then has to manage through the locker room. So when we talk about available salary cap, I think there's confusion. I think it can be confusing to a lot of people because our cap isn't straightforward. But you saw how the Galaxy got decimated in the offseason. They had no money to carry over. They had nothing to bring into the year, and therefore they had to clean house because they didn't have budget. They didn't plan ahead for that. That's not a shot. They won the championship, and I'm pretty sure right now I'd spend every penny if you guaranteed me a championship. On the flip side of that, we know for a fact that happens to us if we spend every penny and we don't accomplish that feat. So in order to have the choice of which options to take, which players to retain, there's a certain amount of money that kind of proves itself over year in MLS. In a club like this that's north of 600, less than $1 million, but it can be anywhere there depending on how far in the playoffs you go and how much bonus is hit and all these fun mechanisms that we've talked about. But some of the strategy is to make sure we can keep the team together. So when we talk about or what's reported available on the cap, we need a rainy day fund in order to make sure we keep the most important players here in the offseason. In terms of the money we've had, I mean, would it be more fun to sit here with a player sitting next to me? Yeah, that would be more fun. That would look better, sound better, feel better. But do I think it's letting the roster down, letting the team down? No, I don't, because I work every day with them and they know every single thing that goes on. There's no secrets when you go across the hallway behind those doors. So that's through and through. We work together. I don't sign players without full buy-in, and they ask for my opinion quite a bit on the roster as well. So it's not the most fun when you don't get your target, but it happens a lot in anyone who's in sales. And make no mistake, we're selling the Sounders. That's what we're selling. And it's not always the easiest job in the world when you're going after high impact guys. I think we could have gone out and got 100 guys that wouldn't have helped us pretty easily, probably in the last 24 hours of the window if we really wanted to. but that wasn't the goal.